Hello, everybody. This is David. I'm alongside Jake, and welcome back to episode 3 of Accepting Reality. Jake, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. All right. So, what do you want to get into first? I know we have a lot of topics to discuss, so take the lead.
I think one of the things that I wanted to begin with was these. I've been noticing more and more insane COVID lockdown and COVID restrictions throughout the United States, and we can obviously get into different countries and European restrictions, but we're going to stay just within the United States. And there's been a lot of pretty harsh restrictions that you would never think would have happened. I mean, if you go back to the very beginning of COVID and I told you that X, Y, and Z would happen, or that it would be proposed to happen, I don't think a lot of people would believe it. So I think it's important to kind of, one, take a step back and look to see what has been proposed, and two, what could possibly be uh, initiated in the future. So we all remember about 6 months ago, of July of 2021, President Biden proposed, and by the way, not just him. I mean, it was the White House press secretary, the
All of
vice
them.
president, everybody. They proposed a door-to-door vaccine push, and
Like
so
door to
basically
door
this,
soliciting, like
right.
going door to door, knocking on doors with the vaccines in hand or whatever.
And so this basically it's sort of not exactly what it does sound like, but it is interesting that this would even be proposed. So basically Biden said, he said, quote, "We need to go to the community by community, neighborhood by neighborhood, and oftentimes door to door, literally knocking on doors to get help to the remaining people." Now, one thing that's important to note, when he says help, this is assuming by his standards that the vaccine is helping. So anybody who doesn't have the vaccine would need his help
hmm
or this policy's help. And so you can say, well, Jake, this is 6 months ago. This is something that it was put forth, it was shot down. Don't even worry about it. It didn't happen. Well, let me take you to a bill that was just proposed in the New York State legislative sessions on January 5th, which is 3 days ago.
Yep.
This bill, which is still in its proceedings and it hasn't been decided yet, it's still holding out. They haven't officially voted on it yet. I want to read some of these things that have happened. The first one, forced COVID shot mandates to attend any school, whether or not you go to private school, public school,
That's what
any
I was
sort of
just going to
religious
ask.
school. Yes, it's for any school. That if this bill was to go through in New York City, this is just, by the way, all these things that I'm going to name, it's just a only a few that are on this bill. That if you go to any school in New York, you're required to get the COVID shot. So whether or not the school thinks it's a good idea, if the school has been advised by, let's say, a healthcare department that's more conservative, that it's not vitally important for you to get the COVID shot, therefore the students don't have to get it, you still have to do it. It's
Yeah,
forced.
especially the kids, because as we've seen, COVID almost does nothing to children, regardless of what variant of the month you want to talk about.
Right,
COVID overall does not affect children the way it affects, for example, 65 and older, which is the deadliest range. So,
right. That's the first. Second, and this is, I think, one of the more insane rules that they're trying to push through. Quote, forces all adult vaccine records into state database. So if
wow.
we step back for a second, one of the movies that I think is kind of cheesy, but it was incredibly important in terms of what the possibility of getting people's guns taken away from them was the movie Red Dawn, and it was
Yep.
in the 80s. Now it's a pretty far out there movie because the movie itself is centered in like in the west, so Colorado in the mountains, and the Russians and Cubans and Mexican have invaded the United States, and there's a war. And anyway, but they invade Colorado, and the first thing that the general does when they take over the city in Colorado, and he says, go into the recreational centers, go to shooting ranges, and go to the sporting goods stores. Pull the databases of everybody who has a registered weapon. Why? Well, because they want to know who's a threat, who is a possibility of somebody who's going to fight against them, and they don't want to worry. They want to get those people, round them up, put them in a camp. That's it. You're talking about putting vaccine records into a state database, which I would imagine is not the safest in terms of, getting hacked. You're talking about public health records that would state whether or not you have the vaccine, whether or not you've gotten boosted. You don't have a choice if it's in the database or not. Now, why is that an issue? Well, let me propose to you that on a national level, that Biden or some other president, let's say if it doesn't happen now, the president of the United States puts it in order that those who are not vaccinated, it's a public threat. Anybody who is not vaccinated is a threat to anybody else. Therefore, they need to be put either fined, jailed, whatever.
Yep.
Well, they go to New York and they say, let's start there. Don't worry, we
have
have
the
a database.
records.
We know exactly who and who doesn't. And anybody that doesn't provide that information, they're arrested anyway. Okay, so you're talking about one, forced COVID mandates to attend schools, and two, your public health records are going to be in a state database for anybody to see who wants it and who needs to get that information. Next one, forced COVID shots for college. That's sort of happening
everywhere.
But this is again trumping a college's decision to do that or not. They're just saying you have to do it.
Even the private college, like one that's
private college,
like a Catholic school, like St. John's, I'm pretty sure is in New York. Like they're not funded. I mean, I'm sure they receive federal funding, but they make their own choices. They're not state run or anything like that, but doesn't matter under this law if it passed, hypothetically.
Right. Next, forced flu shots to attend school and preschool and daycare. Okay, that's again something that's, I don't know about in terms of schools, preschools, but that's on a lower level. The next one is again in a different category of, in my mind, of an alarming attempt to take away your freedoms. Assembly Bill A8398 eliminates religious exemptions for work and college. So let's just take away the college aspect. And let's just say work. Let's say you work at a private company. They're being mandated to require their employees to get the vaccine. You put forth a religious exemption, it gets approved or denied for whatever the reason is. But now they're saying, no matter what beliefs you have, no matter what you believe in, no matter how you believe it, no matter how long you believed in it, that doesn't matter. Get the vaccine. The vaccine and the risk that comes along with it trumps your belief in anything. So let's say you've, before COVID, even believed that you don't want vaccines. It's against your religion. It's putting something into a sacred temple, your body, and you've believed that your whole life. Now they're coming forth and saying you can't even put an exemption through to request not to get it. It's impossible, and you're going to get the vaccine, or if you don't get the vaccine, you're going to get fired. And so now this is the entire state, and not just college, just the workforce. This is essentially saying anybody who's religious has to get the vaccine, or you need to move out of state because you're not going to work anywhere in this state because religious exemptions don't even matter.
And the fact that this bill has even been proposed, and I don't know the rules for the New York government. I know each state sets their own rules for government proceedings and such, but that is in direct violation of the First Amendment, like completely in opposition. And if I'm not mistaken, what I was taught in government class in high school is the federal laws always take precedence over the state laws. The 10th Amendment is the laws not decided by the federal government shall be left up to the states, and they can enforce as they please. So right. really astounded. And again, all of these laws, if you live in New York, I'm terrified. I don't even live in New York, but I'm terrified that these laws were proposed.
Oh, well, wait, there's more.
Ooh,
Now, these next two, I'm just going to read them off back to back, but I just want anybody who's out there who's listening, who's a parent and who's made decisions for their children to listen closely to this. Let's imagine you live in New York City or even New York. And whether or not you're conservative or liberal, let's just say you're more on the side of choosing what to do with your own children. Nobody should tell you how to raise your kids. Bill A3091 slash S3041, quote, eliminates parents' consent to shots when a child reaches 14 years of age. Your
wow.
child is 14, can't drive, can't buy
Can't drink.
alcohol, can't drink, can't buy any kind of cigarettes. But now they've reached the point where they can decide what shots to put in their body. Your beliefs only reach your children until they're 13 years old. Now, the
Mhm.
next one eliminates parents' rights to consent to STD shots for children of any age. Any age.
That makes zero sense because we have an age of consent, right? Like, why?
You have an age of consent, exactly. But that's again going out the window. Now, the last one is the craziest. But
Leave the best for
so
last.
far, if you take these rules for this supposed bill, okay, let's say they're approved. Well, other states are going to try it as well. But what you're also going to do is you're also going to set a precedence of where does it end? You've done parents consent to shots when they're 14, STD shots of any age. What else can the state legislature decide for your children that you don't need consent? Is it going to be medications? If a doctor prescribes your child a medication, who are you to say they don't need it? The doctor ordered it. You have no right to say they have to take it. And what if they come back in 6 weeks and do blood work and the medication's not been taken?
Yep.
Are they going to arrest you? What are they going to do? I mean, where does it testing, experimental testing?
Yep.
It just is. You give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yeah, if
Now,
I could add a quick point for you, we'll reveal this big law about parent consent here in Illinois. Now, this actually passed. Girls, I believe the ages like 12 and older can consent to an abortion without parental
yeah, that's
informing.
crazy.
So 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 13-year-old, they can just go get an abortion and the doctors don't even have to ask. They could just go
That's
and it's
crazy.
done. Don't have to. And this is not just a pending law. I believe this was signed into law or it passed the Illinois House and the Illinois Senate because the Democrats have super majorities, which means they have 60% in both. So they
60%,
can
yeah.
just pass everything freely. And so I believe it's either sitting on Governor Pritzker's desk or it passed into law that you do not need to talk to your parents or they don't even be made aware that you're pregnant and getting an abortion. So just to add, because not
Well,
people know all
okay,
that.
but let's just say that let's just step aside from New York and let's talk about Illinois for a second. What you just said, age is 12. If anybody is listening that's quote unquote pro-choice and thinks that abortion is fine, okay, and you might be saying, well, that just gives them the right to do what they want with their own body. Okay, but let me ask you this. Doesn't it seem odd that when a state will limit a 12-year-old's right to vote, drink, buy alcohol, drive, but they allow them to go into a medical facility and depending on how far along they are in their pregnancy, kill a human life? Doesn't that make you question the motives to what's passed? Because in my eyes, if you're giving a 12-year-old the green light to do that, why not let him buy alcohol? Why not let him buy cigarettes? Why
Yeah.
not let him drive? Why not let him vote? I mean, where's the priority of the government when they've decided that a 12-year-old can do XYZ, but they're not allowed to do everything else? They're too young. They're too young to buy cigarettes, but they're young enough to go in a hospital setting, put on a gown, and allow a doctor to go internally to take a human life out. I mean, just break that down for a second. I mean, makes no sense.
they're even at the age here in Illinois. I don't know if it's by county, by city, by anything, but at that age, there's a curfew. You know, if you're out past a certain time, the police officers can make you stay exactly where you are, and
Yeah.
your parents have to come get you, or a legal guardian. But so
Yeah.
you're too young to be outside without a curfew, but you're allowed to get an abortion with no questions asked. Just insanity.
Yeah. So that brings us to the final point. Assembly Bill A416, quote, allows the governor to imprison without trial anyone she considers a threat to public health. End quote. Now,
I there's like five
this
amendments just broken right
exactly. Now, your constitutional rights have been taken away by this one bill because they've decided that the governor, without reason, without trial, there's no trial. It's their decision, or that's it. It's your word against theirs. They can throw you in jail because you're a threat to public health. I mean, to imagine a scenario where the governor is having a bad day and she hears about somebody not wearing a mask outside, and she decides that that person is a threat to public health. They don't get a trial. They don't get a say so. They have to go. And I don't know the parameters of if they're fined, if they have, I mean, if it's basically like you get arrested, you go to jail, you just don't have a trial. So maybe there's a bail, there's a hearing. I don't know. But the fact that that is even offered in this bill, that it's even a possibility, that somebody thought that would be a good idea, when New York has some of the strictest vaccine laws, but yet they're still getting record number of cases day after day after day. But now it's because some people are a threat to public health. Let's put them in prison. Absolutely insane. That's this legislative bill that was proposed on 1/5/2022. And like I said, you give them an inch and they're going to take a mile.
Well, they're trying to take everything with that last one. I mean, think about the phrase now, I believe it was Thomas Aquinas, where he said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You're giving one person, whether it's a man or a woman or whoever, absolute power over people, and that will corrupt you, as if these people aren't corrupt as it is. Funny enough, I just saw a article linking me to King County in Washington State, which is the county that Seattle, Washington is located in.
Yeah.
And they, on their website, I'm looking at kingcounty.gov. They just announced on January 4th, so 4 days ago from when we're recording this, they have opened up their first isolation and quarantine facility where you will go if you test positive or you have COVID in some way, shape, or form, so they can isolate you and control you better.
Right.
It's a full-fledged, it looks like they refurbished, based on the pictures on the website, they refurbished like a shipping container. They have like nice little college dorm room beds, and they'll do, let's see, looking like a pop-up tent, like those, like they put out for like the NFL training camps, like the big pop-up tents. Looks like they got a nice eating area, all socially distanced tables, all these little videos. This is insanity. So the government also, they commandeered the Clarion Inn in Auburn, Washington, which I believe is a private business, that they're just like, no, we're using you now. So I don't really know what to say. Like I remember thinking about all this stuff happening with COVID, and overseas, like we said, there's been some wild restrictions and such, but we want to focus on America because that's where we live and that's what we think, that's what really matters to us. We didn't expect, crazy laws like that because we live in America. We're the beacon of freedom in the world. But then you've got New York trying to give the governor like unlimited power, like Chancellor Palpatine in Star Wars. And then you've got Washington just taking hotels and building little isolation camps like they do in Australia. If I'm not mistaken, Australia has like 4 or 5 major camps, or if you test positive, they just take you there, whether you want to or not. I could be wrong, but I know they have them. And the prime minister the other day, just to add on to this, one of the prime ministers of Australia said that he has banned outdoor exercise for those unvaccinated. What? Like
outdoor exercise.
It's his official statement. They will arrest you. If you're outside in the park, they will arrest you.
So, okay. So, I mean, I've seen videos of Australia, and I've seen like different images of them of military in the streets. I mean, is it that type of thing where military is finding you on the street and asking you?
Yep. If you're exercising, they'll ask for your papers or your pass on your phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is not going to fly. But I mean, okay, so now Washington, they had the first, I mean,
They had the first
recorded
outbreak.
of COVID, right at the very beginning.
Yeah, they had the whole nursing home. They were the first big outbreak, a nursing home up in Washington State. Yep.
Can you imagine being the guy who had like the who brought it? Like it was going to come here eventually, you know, like COVID was going to happen. I mean, it's not anybody's fault, but can you imagine if like if you knew you were the person who brought it here? I mean,
Yeah, that would be awkward.
you could kind of have that just like, I mean, you could put that in your LinkedIn profile. I mean, like
Patient
what are your
zero.
skills? Bringing coronavirus to the United States in March 2nd of whatever it was, whatever the day. But no, okay. So the Washington thing, how does that? Are they coming to your house, or are they just saying if you test positive, then they put you in this quarantined area? You are what you are.
From the looks of the website, and again, it's a very vague description. I think that's intentional. It's not door to door. It's not mandatory. It's if you go get tested, they ask you to go to these facilities so they can lighten the load on their hospitals.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, I think the thing that is well, I mean, especially about that, my question would be, are you at a point where like your work, do you get paid if you're in this place? Do you have to just sit there and you wait? What if it does it only apply to unvaccinated people? I mean, I don't know how to, you know what I'm saying? Like quantify that, like how, where does it end and how many stipulations come along with it?
Yeah, there's no like, okay, so the official statement is, quote, isolation and quarantine facilities provide supervised care to symptomatic or COVID positive
Supervised.
adults who cannot safely quarantine or recover in their own home or do not have a home. That is the official quote on their website.
Supervised. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know. I think that's another dangerous precedence because now you're talking about somebody who's going to control where you are, know where you are at all times. And then, I mean, does it get recorded in a certain database that you were at this hotel at this time and they've done this? And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of privacy issues that come along with that. That's the big red flag to me, other than just putting you away from your home if you're positive with COVID-19.
Yep.
I mean, but these vaccine mandates, it's interesting because the vaccine mandates have really sort of sparked, I think, a whole new conversation. And the biggest thing that people over the last couple of months is they were waiting to see what the Supreme Court would do.
Yep.
In these scenarios. And I know that, whether it was businesses who were being told that they were going to be forced to give them the mandate, and then they were in turn suing the federal government and Biden for his law, or not his law, his proposed 100 plus company workers that would have to get the mandate. And so I know a couple of days ago that the Supreme Court was hearing a lot of issues and arguments, and they were themselves discussing it, and it was probably the biggest news that was happening.
Yeah.
And I know that I've heard a lot of goofy things that they were saying that to me really caught some red flags and sort of made me wonder about their capability of actually smoothly and efficiently running this sort of hearing. And it worried me about the decision that they were going to come up with if they were going to say, well, the mandates are a good idea. Now, what did the one justice say regarding children? I mean, wasn't that totally, from what I know, it was completely baseless.
Well, she made a statement that this was Justice Sotomayor. I believe that's how you say her name. I could be completely wrong, so I apologize if I butchered her name. She made the statement that currently in America, there are 100,000 kids in the hospital with COVID. Like that was her direct statement that She knew in
Okay.
that moment, 100,000 kids in the hospital with COVID, to try and give the Solicitor General, who was there to, on behalf of the federal government and OSHA, to
Right.
explain why the vaccine mandate is lawful and good. She was basically giving her a softball question or a softball statement, as it's called, to bounce off of it and make herself sound better.
Sure.
And also, another funny slip. Now, this was Justice Breyer or Breyer. I'm not sure how his name is pronounced as well. He said
Hmm.
that as of January 4th, I believe the arguments were held on the 5th or the 6th, that yesterday that there were 750 million positive cases in one day. That was his exact quote. And
That's a lot.
Twitter actually started blowing up saying hashtag 750 million, because he just misspoke, but it sounded really funny when he was trying to be very sophisticated. And then
Yeah.
later in the deliberations, like, I just like to make a clarification. I said 750,000. I
Oh,
meant to
brother.
say, yeah, yeah. So, but actually, other than some silly questions from Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Clarence Thomas, actually, I didn't really know what he was trying to accomplish with some of his questions. It seems like it's going to be a 6-3 vote to shut down the mandate for workers of 100 more, like any company who has 100 more employees,
Yeah.
based on their questioning and such, because most of them believe that this should go to the states, because it's been settled in a Supreme Court case before that the states can have somewhat power to do that, but the federal government does not.
Right.
So
Now, I mean,
that's the biggest one.
let's say the Supreme Court doesn't exist and there's no higher power in terms of uh, governing nationally, like the federal government. And I don't know, maybe in this scenario, you can take away the state's power, you can give them power, whatever you want to do. But I mean, I think the biggest thing here is that one, they're taking your choice away,
Yep.
but they're also, in essence, taking your free will. They're taking away your decision making process to decide how and what you want to do for yourself. And I mean, in terms of free will, I don't know of anything more important. I mean, your free will decides how you act, and your morals depend on your free will. The morals govern your free will. But in again, we're created to be creatures that we make our own decisions. Yes, God knows what we're going to say, but we don't. So these mandates are what they are. But I mean, they're essentially an attempt to take away your free will. And because the government is basically saying, we don't think you can make
Your
a
own
good enough
decision.
educated decision based on this, because only 60-70% of people have been vaccinated.
Yep.
So that's not enough. It's got to be 100.
Yep.
They're going to, July, they're going to come to your door to door. New York's going to make it to where they're going to imprison you if you're a threat. So this free will issue, I think, is almost, if not more important than just the vaccines themselves.
And I actually have had that thought since like COVID started. In reality, I could see that a government does not like people, government with malicious intent does not like people who are strong individuals. That's just proven over the times that we can observe as humans. And as devout Catholics as you and I, we know free will, it should be absolute. It is completely our choice whether to do good or do evil and suffer the consequences of those actions. Now, I'm not
Right.
saying a criminal should be able to murder somebody and go unnoticed. No, he chose to murder somebody. He should suffer for his consequences. But good people who just want to say, no, I don't want this medical procedure, or no, I don't want to work 16 hours in a day, they should have the right to do that. And that should be an absolute uninfringed upon right, that government should, again, no business getting involved with whatsoever. And it's
Mm-hmm.
reinforced by, the Holy Catholic Church that God gave us free will. That's what puts us above all of the animals and all other
Right.
creatures on this earth. We have that ability to reason and rationalize. And right now we've seen since COVID, and this goes back to what we said last episode about fear, when you're so afraid, you can't make your own decisions. I don't know if you've ever had this situation, but I've been around people when things are getting kind of south, either like a bad weather situation or someone threatened something like that. And I could see people were scared and they looked at me or like, what should we do? Like they immediately, like, instantly
Yeah.
gave up their free will. Like, we're done. And
Yeah, I mean,
that
it's like
happens everywhere. That happens all. It's a natural reaction. You want safety.
that's why it's like if you go watch movies, and for instance, in a movie where maybe somebody is they hear gunshots,
Yep.
and people will run.
Yep.
And in the movie, they run away. They try to get to the entrance, and they want to get away as quickly as possible. But in reality, most people will they lock up. That adrenaline and everything just freezes, and they don't know
Fight,
what to
flight,
do.
or freeze.
Or they hit the ground and they don't know where, so yes, there is that. If you're scared, it affects your cognitive ability to make sound decisions. But I mean, for free will, I think when you have free will and the option to choose what's best for yourself, that is hinged upon your own responsibility. I mean, if you have somebody who's irresponsible, they're going to use their free will to make bad decisions. So by having free will, that separates the people who are responsible from the people that are not responsible. That's why you have people who may not have enough. They have a good job. Okay, they make $2,000 a month in profit, but then they buy a car and then they lease it for $900 a month.
Yep.
But then they also have a $900 a month payment on their apartment, and so they're using their free will to make an irresponsible choice. So these mandates, like I said, in themselves are bad, but the attempt to take away your choice for yourself is, again, it's a slap in the face, because the government's saying, we don't trust you to make the right decision. And how do they determine what's right, what's wrong? I mean,
Yep.
that's what they're telling you. Listen, whatever you may think, we know it's right. You're not going to make the right decision. We're worried you're not going to make the right decision, and so we're going to make it for you. Get the vaccine, which is downright awful.
Yep. And we'll talk about this next thing I'm going to bring up down the road in other episodes, but I've always had an issue with people who say, well, this person makes more than enough money. He should be required to pay X amount. And I would like to ask them, well, how do you know what's the fair amount? Who
Right.
made the judge of fair income and stuff? We'll spend plenty of time talking about something like that, but that just made me think of that when you're like, the government's telling you that, no, we know what's best. You listen to us, give up your free will, give up, the biggest, I've always thought free will is like the biggest thing that God gave us, like the biggest gift, because we have the free choice. No one, or we're not bound to any instinct. We're not bound to any pattern. We can do whatever we want. And I always thought that's our greatest gift. And governments or people with malicious intent always try to take it.
And I'll say this, the last thing. We're given that free will to make decisions, but I think it's also important to remember that Christ was also a human. He was made man.
Yep.
He himself had free will, and he could have chosen to not go through the things he went through to redeem us, but he did.
Yep.
I mean, that in and of itself shows how great his love was for us, that he took that free will. Being God also, he could have made it a lot simpler, a lot less strenuous, a lot less painful, but he didn't, because he knew what he had to do. So I mean, yes, you're right. It's the greatest gift we have, but God also, in his son, had that same ability and chose to go the most painful route for us, which I think is pretty, incredible to think about.
Yeah, I agree. So that one, that topic of free will, we could spend hours and hours upon. But we're getting near the end of this episode, and I wanted to end with a little more personal, a little more fun, lighthearted topic, and that is music. So I am an active musician. I've been playing piano since I was 10. I'm 23 now, so 13 years of piano. I've been playing guitar since I was 18. And I love music. I grew up with it in my house. Everyone loves singing, all sorts of kinds of music. Jake, I know yourself, you started playing piano for a few years here and there.
Yeah, I can still play a little bit, but I played when I was around 8 or 9. But I'm a real procrastinator by nature, and I hated practicing because I would have to sit down and actually do something. But I played for a couple of years, and I did recitals and things like that. But I stopped because I just hated practicing, and my family was like, "Why are we paying for these lessons that you're not doing?"
Practicing?
But yeah, I mean, piano is. I play piano, and then I've always wanted to play guitar. I think at one point in my life I'm going to try to play the guitar or
It's
learn
not too
how to play.
bad. You could easily learn the chords and learn how to strum, and that's most of guitar and modern music, but you could always take
Right.
it a step further. And you
Yeah.
also sing in the choir, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I've been involved in music for at least 17 years.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, now that we've kind of shown our backgrounds, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about like our favorite artist or musician. So, Jake, you can go ahead. I think I know who you're going to say, but give your little story of how you started listening to this artist, what about it is so intriguing to you, and stuff like that. Just give us the whole
Well,
9 yards.
I don't really remember exactly how what I used to listen to before listening to this musician, but I used to help cut the grass and landscape at church. And so myself and my friend, his brother, and his dad, we used to all do it. And his dad would listen to Gordon Lightfoot. And he listened to him for years and years. And I think most people know who Gordon Lightfoot is, at least over a certain age group.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody over that's around my age, or maybe born after 19, I'd say mid 80s, might not know who he is. He was more popular in the 70s, late 60s, 70s. But his dad always used to listen to Gordon Lightfoot. And I mean, he would play it all the time. And so it just started with one song. And I said, you know what? It got to be the point where I knew his name and I knew some songs, but I didn't know exactly which song for which. I just remember hearing him. And I said, there was one song, and I said, you know what? I said, give me that song. Put it on a disc. Let me, that's my favorite. So it started from there. And then I got to another song. And then I knew two, and then three. And then it actually turned out for Christmas, I got a flash drive with like 70 of his songs on there.
Oh, nice.
And so that was all I listened to. I mean, I'd put it in, and and from there, he's been my absolute favorite. He's more, he's from Canada. The reason I like him is he's folk, but I think he's written himself a little over or around 200 songs. He's written the music and he's written the words.
That's impressive.
His most popular songs are The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald and Sundown and If You Could Read My Mind. He's got some others that are a little less popular, but I think when you like a musician, you tend to like the songs that no one else really knows, or not the fans know the main songs. They know if you go to a Gordon Lightfoot concert, which I have. I've actually met him once, but I've been to see him 3 or 4 times. I know his songs by the first chord or the first note, just because I've listened to him so much. So you go to a concert and he starts to play a song, and me and my friend and his not his brother, because his brother didn't like him, but his dad, we used to go to concerts together. And he would play it out and we'd start clapping because we would know exactly what the song is. And most people, if it wasn't Sundown or if it wasn't The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, they would have to wait until he actually sang a line or two before they start clapping, because they wouldn't know what it was. So the real fans, like the diehard fans like I was, my favorites are the ones that are the 7th track of his, third album that no one would really know.
Yeah,
But that's my favorite. So I just think that his songs have really meant a lot to me. I mean, he discusses a lot of topics, but I mean, it's in the 70s, so he talks about there's a lot of his songs are love songs, but he's got great melodies. And basically his songs are kind of all the same. They basically have 2 verses, and they have a chorus, and then he's got a bridge, and then he's got one final one. I mean, there's not much change to it, but I like that. And like I said, the melodies are great. They get stuck in your head. It's hard to listen to him without start to, tap your foot or get it out of your head. And so, I mean, just being able to see him in concert, he's old now. I think he's like, I don't know, he's probably at least 180 years old, but at least sounds like it. But
yeah,
one of my absolute favorites, and Gordon Lightfoot, he's the man.
Yeah. You actually sent me a few of his songs, and I really like a few of them. And he does do more than you would expect if you listen to it. Like, I really like the song Black Day in July, which is about the Detroit
Black
riots.
Day in July.
It's a really good song.
What about
well
another one?
written.
What other ones do you like that I sent you?
Sit Down Young Stranger is my favorite. It's just pure poetry. It's just pure poetry, and from beginning to end,
never had a dollar that I didn't earn with my. That's a good song.
Total poetry.
Yeah.
And that concept of having very good lyrics is really what I found in my favorite artist. Now, growing up, my dad loved the band Genesis, and I thought, okay, I'll listen to all their stuff. And I thought, when I first heard a few of them, like, okay, they're good. They're good. And then I started playing piano more, and then I gained a massive respect for they had a keyboard player who was just amazing. He would make his own keyboard sounds and he would arrange all the music. So I'm like, okay, this is really
Uh-huh.
cool from a musician standpoint. So I listened to all their music. And Genesis originally started with Peter Gabriel, who was did very well as a single solo artist as
I
their
was gonna
lead
say,
singer,
yeah.
and he left in 1978 or 1979, and then they asked their drummer Phil Collins to take over, and that's my favorite era of the band because I love Phil Collins solo music as well. I actually got to see him when he announced he was coming back on tour for like one last time, even though they're on tour again as Genesis, even though they said they were done. But
Yeah.
about 2018 or 2019, I can't remember which year, my parents bought tickets to see Phil Collins at the United Center in Chicago as a graduation present for me. And I
Oh
was
wow.
loving every moment of it because I never thought I'd see him in person. You know, he's like, well, he's very old himself, but it was just awesome. And his music, it's different. I would say it's unique because Phil Collins can't read music. He'll tell you that he doesn't read musical notation. It's all by the
Oh,
ear
okay.
and all from his own system he developed.
Interesting.
And his music spans from deep, angry, vengeful songs like In the Air Tonight to songs where he covers Diana Ross saying, You Can't Hurry Love. You know, he does that one.
Oh yeah.
He does such a wide range of them as a solo artist. He did some songs about the Ireland Civil War that were really good. He wrote songs for Disney, and then he actually did the music, as most people probably know. He did the song "You'll Be in My Heart" and all the other music from Tarzan. I know
Yeah.
that's a family favorite in most places.
Those were, yeah.
That
Those were
one,
great songs.
you know, that was toward the end of his career. He had already been touring and making music for over 25 years at that point. And then, because he started, I think, when he was 17 or 18 as the drummer for Genesis. So he's been my favorite. I bought his biography, I read his biography. Um,
Does
really,
he
really good.
does he like, okay, so for instance, Gordon Lightfoot, one of the songs that he writes is called well, it's in French. It's called Nous vivons ensemble, which is we've got to stay together.
Yeah.
And so people think it's about a love story.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you listen to it, because the first he basically sings the song first in English and then he sings it in French.
Uh-huh.
But it's actually about, like, I don't know if you can, if you have an example of Phil Collins, but of doing this, but like you think it's about one thing and you read into more about that song and you find out it's about something completely different. So for instance, Nous vivons ensemble, I was like, that's a love song. It's got to be about a love song. And he says, we've got to stay together. We've got to find each other now. And it's actually about in the early 70s when Quebec was trying to put forth legislation to leave
Oh,
Canada
secede
as
from
their own.
Canada.
And so he was saying, he wrote that song about how they've got to try to stay together and stay one nation, which is pretty cool, that I didn't know. And that I think how many songs of his are like that I assume one thing, but it's about something completely different, you know?
Well, the biggest controversy, not controversy, is about Phil Collins' number one hit "In the Air Tonight." One of the lyrics were, "If you, you know, if you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand." And people thought, and the rumor got pretty intense that Phil Collins watched a man drown, and that's where he got the song from. But it was really about his like relationship issues and stuff. And then another song that they did for the that Phil did with the band Genesis was Land of Confusion. It was their title track of one of their albums. People thought it was about like a sci-fi thing because sci-fi had taken off in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
but it was really about Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher because things were changing so rapidly from like the 70s to the 90s with Ronald Reagan coming into America and Margaret Thatcher, I believe it was a prime minister or some high official in the UK.
Yeah.
But that's really what it was about. And now they sing the song and they're like, now it perfectly represents the world after COVID. So it's
Yeah. Yeah. There you
yeah,
go.
really interesting, all around phenomenal songwriter. Again, I'm very thankful I got to see him live and pretty cool. You got to meet your favorite singer. I can't say the same, but that's
Yeah, he's not exactly like, I don't know. I mean, he's not the the kind of person that like right now, if you told me, hey, I've got tickets to Corn Lightfoot, I wouldn't go because the concerts he gives now are the same concerts as he gave 10 years ago. He wears the same thing, sings the same songs, same backdrop, everything. But meeting him was pretty neat. But what was interesting is when we were waiting to meet him. I mean, it's no um, lavish thing when you meet him. I mean, he basically just he does them usually concerts of small theaters of 2,500 people,
Yep.
just like not even downtown, just kind of on the outskirts of certain towns, and they have old time theaters. And we were waiting to talk to him, and he was talking to this lady, and we didn't really think anything of it. There's a lot of people that were waiting to talk to him, and his biggest song, his most popular song, I would say, or one of his most popular songs, "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald," is about the boat that was on its way to Cleveland that sank, the Edmund Fitzgerald, and 200 and some people died. And so later on, we found out that this lady who was talking to him, and he was really he was really talking to her. I mean, he was really in it, which he really isn't, because he's like old and he smokes and he's been drinking his whole life and he's kind of out of it. He's not a very social person, is what I mean. But he's really in tune to this lady, and she leaves, and we find out that that woman, she was older. She actually had a son who was on the Edmund Fitzgerald that died,
Ow.
and he had never met anybody from a family like that before, and so he was like, which is pretty neat. So I mean, just having that connection, but it was nice to meet him. I don't remember what I said. I think there's a video of it. I probably didn't say much because I was so in awe, but
Yep.
now, but he's one of those people that as soon as I hear him on the radio, I got, and you probably think this with Phil Collins too, but sometimes I'll go a couple weeks, couple months without listening to Gordon Lightfoot, like incessantly. And then I'll think of a song and I play it, or I come across a song, and then it gets me on a roll of listening to him for like a week or 2 weeks straight. And I
Definitely.
remember all the songs that I'm like, oh, I remember this song. I was in high school, and it takes me back to studying for this test, and I was doing this. It really rushes all these memories back, and then once I get stuck on them for like a day, then I'm on them for like the next few weeks, because then I have to go back and I'm like, oh, I forgot about this song. I forgot how good this song was.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way with music, and especially Phil Collins. One little hit of it, and then I'm down the rabbit trail or down the album listing for
Now,
the next week.
he's got to be, right, one of the absolute best drummers in the last 30, 40 years, right?
He's widely considered that. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen videos of him, 20, 30 years ago, and he is insane.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, that was what got him. And again, not reading music, he would just memorize the music, and then
Yeah.
that was it. He didn't have to. He had a perfect memory when it came to music. So
Yeah. Pretty cool. Yeah. He's got one of those unique voices that as soon as he sings something, it.
oh
It's
yeah,
him.
oh yeah. That's another reason I like him, is that he's unique in his own way.
Yeah, for sure.
So, well, I think that's a good point to end on. For anyone who is listening, thank you for listening. If you'd like to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we are under the name DJ Media. The links are in the description and on the YouTube page. If you're there, again, the YouTube page is DJ Media. We'll again, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And then the podcast will be on, where you can usually find them: Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, all the normal places. So yeah, I think this is a good place to stop. Jake, thank you very much. This was David, and have a good night, everybody.